First of all, a little definition. What is an exchange rate crisis? Well, an exchange rate crisis is a sudden and sharp depreciation of one country's currency. So here we have a few exchange rate crises. What do we have here? Right here, 1992, remember, Germany increases the interest rates to fight off inflation. As a result, remember last time we saw that France stayed in the fixed exchange rate regime and experienced a recession. The UK instead exited the fixed exchange rate regime and experienced this depreciation of the currency, is the blue line here. But as you can see there, that very same year, there were exchange rate crises for Spain, Sweden, Finland, Italy, Portugal, and so on. Right? For Spain and Portugal, it was a little bit in 92 and then more in 93. For Italy and Britain was 92, the most substantial depreciation. And in this figure, it shows you the consequences of it. Now, when there is an exchange rate crisis, things are not just happening all of a sudden. You see here, we're plotting the deviation for the normal rate of economic growth. So say, roughly speaking, 2% per year for advanced economies. When you're advanced economies and you experience an exchange rate crisis, you're kind of not growing that much in the 3 years before. You're growing slower in the 3 years before. Same thing happens for emerging economies. But then for advanced countries, the year of a crisis is not that big of a difference. It's not that the crisis is not that big a deal. But if you're an emerging market, it is pretty bad because your growth rate of GDP is lower than the normal growth rate, about 3%. Okay, so now we're going to study basically two theories for why these exchange rate crises happen. And these are very, very important because they really exemplify two ways with which things can go wrong. The idea here is that the exchange rate crisis occurs because the government keeps on spending money. The government keeps on running a budget deficit. So, say that the government runs a persistent deficit, which is persistently being financed by the central bank with basically, as we saw before, central bank introduces money supply in the system in exchange for the government debt, the new government deficit, the new government bonds. Okay? How does it hold the exchange rate to be fixed? Imagine this. The Danish economy is financing the government debt. So it puts Danish kroners in the market. So what should happen to the Danish kroner? If you put more Danish kroners in the market, what happens to the Danish kroner price? It goes down, right? It depreciates. But you're in a fixed regime. So how do you fix that? How do you make that not happen? You put in Danish kroners. How do you make the price of the Danish kroner not change? Well, you also release some of euros. So basically, you're giving up on reserves. So here we have the money supply in blue. I said the money supply is sort of fixed, and because if it changes, the interest rate change, and so will the exchange rate. So to increase your B, to increase your domestic credit, holding constant the total value of your assets or of your liabilities, you have to reduce the reserves. If you keep on running this deficit, eventually your domestic credit will be equal to your money supply because your reserves go to zero. Okay? Make sense? Now, what's interesting here? What's interesting here is that this never happens. Why does this never happen? Well, say you are in year 3, okay? And you've seen that in year 2 and year 1, there was a government deficit, and the central bank paid for that government deficit, so reserves fell. What do you think is going to happen the following year, year 4? Well, you know, you can make your own expectations, but perhaps you think that the same thing is going to happen. So you're worried that in year 4, the fixed exchange regime will go kaput, and the money supply will increase, so the currency will keep on depreciating. And so what do you do in year 3? Do you hold any of that country's debt? Well, you would ask a much higher interest rate, wouldn't you? Let's put it another way. Say I told you, so here's 100 pesos. I told you that in 4 years, the government keeps on buying this debt, the central bank keeps on buying the debt. So in 4 years, the peso will depreciate because it will move to a floating regime and will start depreciating. Would you hold on to those pesos? No, right? You wouldn't. You've only held them for a high enough interest rate. But that's equivalent to say you don't want to hold pesos. And so you basically sell the pesos for the reserves. And so the reserves do not run out in year 4. They run out much earlier. They run out, say, in year 2, where, you know, people believe, okay, this is not going to hold. In 2 years, we are out if things keep going like this. And they're causing the exchange rate crisis suddenly. Type of model with the contingent monetary policy provide a new mechanism to really think deeply about this sort of crisis. And so to think about this, let's consider again the 92 case of Germany and the UK. And so we know that interest rate in Germany goes up. What should the, so scenario number 1, interest rate in Germany does not go up for whatever reason. Okay? So the interest rate in Germany stays low. So it will also stay low in England. And so things are okay for both countries, especially for England. So England will stay in the fixed regime. And so the fixed regime is credible. You believe that they're going to stay in the fixed regime. Scenario number 2, the German government, the central bank, Germany increases the interest rate. And so the interest rate has to increase also in the UK. But that will cause a recession, like if you just think in terms of ISLM model, which again, you don't have to worry for this course, but it just provides you some intuition for why these things, why a higher interest rate causes a recession. So higher interest rate reduces the investment, so GDP will fall. Why should the UK stay in the fixed regime if it's about to experience a recession because of that? You don't believe that that's going to happen, right? You believe that the UK is going to exit. So you believe that the peg is not really credible. Okay? What is the trick here? Well, the trick here is that if you expect the German government to increase the interest rate, and hence the UK will exit from the peg, today you ask for a higher interest rate in the UK. Because you think, okay, the UK is Germany is gonna increase the interest rate. The peg is gonna break, the pound is gonna depreciate. You want me to hold pound denominated assets, I ask for a higher interest rate. And by asking for a higher interest rate and the fact that increasing the interest rate in the UK, that's making it more likely that the UK will exit the fixed regime. Okay? Does that make sense? But this is beautiful. This is a self-fulfilling prophecy. And this is what happened in the Asian crisis.